Long, long ago, a king named Vijay had a daughter named Ratna. When a child, Ratna was very fond of tales. One of the tales she used to hear from her nurse went like this. In a certain forest lived a couple of doves. They lived in a cozy nest on a huge banyan tree along with their young ones. Once a great fire destroyed the forest. The dove couple flew away, but their dovelets were burned to death. The dove couple wept for a long time. They lost all interest in life. They flew around the great fire crying over the death of their dear ones. When they were totally exhausted, they sat down on a branch looking at the burning forest. No use of our living any longer. Let us leap into the fire and die, said the she dove. The he dove agreed to do so. However, just when both would leap into the fire, the he dove changed his mind. Wait, wait, he cried. Let us reconsider our decision. But the she dove paid no heed to his cry. She jumped into the flames and was lost forever. While concluding the story, the nurse would say, never believe the male creatures. The princess, who heard the story with great attention, asked, but what about the she dove? It died, did it? It died. But it was born as our sweet princess Ratna, replied the nurse, laughing. Time passed. The nurse was no more. The princess grew up. But two ideas that remained deeply imprinted on her mind were that she should not believe a male creature and that she was the she dove in her previous birth. One day Princess Ratna told the king, Father, I wish to retire into the mansion that stands in the middle of our garden. My maids alone would guard me and serve me. No male inmate of the palace should be allowed into the garden. Why do you want to shun the male inmates? Asked the king affectionately. I hate all male creatures, replied the princess in a firm voice. Of course, excepting my noble father. But what about your marriage? Never shall I marry, answered the princess. The king laughed, but he made all arrangements for the princess to live in the secluded mansion in the garden. One afternoon, two young men were spied upon by Ratna's maids inside the garden. How dare you come here? Get out. You seem to be strangers. Perhaps you are ignorant of the rule that men are not allowed into this garden, screamed the maids. What a pity that such a lovely garden should be forbidden to us simply because we are not women. Who owns this? Asked the young man. Princess Ratna, she hates men, replied the maids. The two young men left the place quietly. Outside the wall, they exchanged glances. This is not a queer situation, said one of them. It is so, said the other. Of the two, one was a prince and the other his friend. They were traveling from land to land for sake of knowledge and experience. They decided to probe into the situation and, if possible, to cure the princess of her strange attitude to men. Soon they found out the house of the flower maid of the palace. Under the pretext of learning about the flowers available in the king's garden, they talked to her and endeared themselves to her. We hear that your princess is rather ugly, observed the prince. Shut up. Which liar told you so? Our princess is beautiful, but no man is lucky enough to see that beauty, asserted the flower maid. By and by, the two friends introduced themselves to the flower maid. She was delighted to know that they were determined to try to cure the princess of her hatred. She agreed to help them in every possible way. The prince and his friend learned why the princess developed the hatred. They discussed for a long time and hit upon a plan. The prince knew a little of magic. From a turban, he could whip up a few doves, a bunch of flowers, and even a rabbit. The flower maid whispered to the princess, A great magician is on a visit to this town. What a pity that you cannot see his performance. Just as you refuse to see men, he refuses to look at women. The princess loved magic. She was excited. She ran to her father and proposed that the visiting magician be asked to show his magic in the garden. She would see the performance hiding behind the screen. The king sent his messenger to the magician. The prince, his friend, and the flower maid met the king privately and told him all about their plan. The king nodded and agreed to give them a chance. The magic was duly performed in the garden. The princess witnessed the show from behind the screen. When the play was over, as tutored by the flower maid, the king asked the prince, Young man, why do you refuse to look at women? The prince stood in silence. His head hung. The king repeated his question. Your Highness, I was silent because it will be a sin to utter a lie before a king. Now that you have repeated your question, I feel obliged to tell you the truth. In my previous birth, I was a dove. With my wife and children, I lived happily in a forest. Once a big fire destroyed our children. My wife and myself decided to end our lives in the fire. But just as we would jump into the flames, my wife escaped. I called out to her again and again, but she was not there to answer me. I died alone. Reborn as a human being, I have not been able to forget the past life. I hate women because of my wife's conduct. It is most amazing, exclaimed the king. Indeed, my lord, I never thought that my wife would be so very fickle-minded. I am afraid all women are like that, commented the disguised prince with a sigh. Suddenly the screen parted. The princess sprang forward. You are a liar. I died while you escaped, she shouted. The disguised prince cast a stern look at the princess. So you are here, reborn as a princess, he muttered gravely. Feigning to be angry, he then said, Are you not ashamed of your conduct? I was just asking you to wait so that we could pray together to meet in the next life. But you flew away. How dare you say I flew away? Did I not leap into the fire instantly? Is it not you who escaped? Demanded the princess. Escaped? Did I not jump into the fire when I failed to locate you? Asked the prince. There was a lull. Then the princess said in a soft voice, Probably I misunderstood you. Please excuse me. The prince took a step towards the princess and said politely, I too should apologize to you. I failed to see you jumping into the fire because of excessive smoke. It was wrong on my part to think that you escaped. Well, it was a case of misunderstanding on both the sides. Now that the position is clear, where is the difficulty in the two of you coming together in this life? Said the prince's friend, stepping forward. It is an excellent proposal, commented the minister and many others. The prince remained in the palace. As the princess talked to him, her hatred for men slowly died down. One evening, the prince confessed to her all he had done to cure her of her wrong idea about men. Luckily, the princess took no offense at his confession, for she had already set her heart upon him. Their marriage was performed on the earliest auspicious day.
यज्ञो निःश्रेष्ठतमं कर्म